Welcome to Carole Tuesday Week by Week, the Shinichiro Watanabe show about music in a future where AI makes music and humans don't do nothing. Weird intro, episode 11. Last episode we saw the semifinal between the Weird Universe Lady and the Fire Brothers, between the Universe Lady and Sibel. We kind of got a little payoff for her storyline, and then we saw the other semifinal as well, and now we have the big showdown between Angela and our, duo Carole Tuesday in the finals this week. Episode 12, as I said, this is going to be the half of the 2-core run of the show. So this is going to be like the mid-season finale, and we're going to get to see finally the showdown that we've been waiting for the past 12 episodes that they've been setting up. Angela is the other character that they spend a lot of time developing, so it makes sense that the payoff for her arc is that she gets to have her time in the sun with Carole Tuesday. So without further ado, let's get started on the episode. Never mind, I was completely wrong. We didn't see the other semifinal. I was wondering, I was like, okay, so we saw Pyotr's performance last week, and then we ended on this like surprise cliffhanger of this explosion that Tuesday had in this birthday gift box that she got, supposedly from Sibel. And this reminded me obviously of like those weird like acid attacks where the people throw acid in people's faces because they got refused by them or something. And she targeted her hand too, like knowing that she would open the box like this, so that if you open it with your hand, you're going to open it with the hand that you prefer to play the guitar with, so that's the one that's going to get damaged. Seems oddly calculated for Sibel to do something like that. I didn't really have her pegged as doing something like that, but at least we get some payoff for her story arc, because her whole thing has been that she's kind of this weird, kind of obsessive stalker fan of Tuesday this whole time. So she's now in a situation where she got refused by Tuesday and she couldn't take it. Obviously, she didn't process it well, so she gave her this weird like explosion, and her hand is all burned now and she can't play the guitar. Pretty dramatic way to start off the episode. Pyotr kind of just set the house on fire with his performance. And obviously he's super popular. We don't really know how the decisions are made on the show. We kind of just assume that it's the judge's decision because we aren't really told anything about fan vote or anything like that. So just assuming that it's the judge's decision, it shouldn't matter that he's popular, but the judges seem to like his performance as well. So typical like third act drama here, halfway through the show. So let's keep going.
Okay. じゃあそろそろ歌ってもらおう。曲は Lost My Way.
So before they perform, I just wanted to say a couple things. That little exchange he had with Carole where he asked her like, oh, if your parents were watching, what would you tell them? They played it off as kind of like a genuine question, like an unrehearsed type thing. But usually in reality shows, when they ask questions like that, it's usually something they've already told you they're going to ask you. So like have an answer prepared. Because I don't think most people are that good at improvising. And generally when you're on live TV, you don't want like that first attempt answer. You want something that's kind of already more prepared, because even if it is live, people don't like it when you just stumble over your words and don't say anything meaningful. So she says that, and then they go on to perform, which makes me, and then to talk about the other side plot where people are still wondering who did the whole like birthday gift explosion scenario. I thought it was just super obvious that it was supposed to be Sibel, but apparently it's not. Are we going to get a twist at the end where we learn that it's Sibel? Because to me, it was super obvious that it was Sibel because, one, no one really else has a grudge against Tuesday in particular. Like, if you wanted to target any one of them, you could have targeted Carole or Tuesday. And second, she only told Sibel that it was her birthday, or Sibel's the only one that mentioned that it was her birthday. So that's like the Chekhov's gun. That's how you know that it was Sibel. If that is the level of twist that we're going to see in the show, I'm somewhat disappointed by this mid-season finale. So far, Erdogan has been the most entertaining part of this episode. To be honest, Carole Tuesday kind of, I feel like their characterization has been somewhat lost on me. Even though Carole is a refugee, like we don't really get to hear that much about her past, or like her make any attempt to reconcile with her past or contact her parents or anything, and that's fine. Your identity doesn't have to like dictate what kind of actions you take. But then it makes me feel like, since they mentioned it now, it would have been nice to hear more about it than just in this talent show stage. Like if Tuesday had been more curious about that, because from her upbringing as kind of like this Ojo-sama, like pampered, spoiled rich girl type person, not to say that she hasn't suffered. She had a pretty kind of cloistered, isolated life herself. It would have been nice if she had been more curious about that and they had some kind of emotional connection between them based on kind of the similarities they had between their two very different pasts. Just throwing out spitballing here what they could have done. I think they did do that to some extent, but I just feel like it wasn't enough to make the characters stand out in any meaningful way. And that's why I still relate more to Angela than to either one of them. And maybe that's the point of the show, is like Carole Tuesday is the name of the show, but you still relate to Angela more. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be the case, but whenever we see Angela and she's like very visibly struggling with, her guardian who's kind of abusive to her, or her whole situation in general where people just assume she's some kind of fake person because she's a model and she's now moving into music. I feel like her struggle is more relatable to me than Carole Tuesday. This is something I've mentioned time and again. But Carole, like just in the past few episodes, like the first 5 to 6 episodes, we really spent a lot of time like with the characters, just going through actions with them. And I feel like there were a few missed opportunities in between there where we could have done more character development, where the characters could have been more endearing in a way. Not to say that they weren't played off as cutesy, because they were. There's nothing, like lacking in the cuteness department, but just they don't stand out in any meaningful way from the people around them. Like, if Carole Tuesday weren't the main characters of the show, would we really be as attached to them as we are now? If we had spent more time with like GGK or some of the other performers in the talent show, would we be more attached to them than we are to Carole Tuesday? Because I don't think there's anything particularly special about Carole Tuesday that makes them stand out. And that may be also a point that the show is trying to make, is that you don't really need to be a special person. Like, you don't need some kind of special attribute like a chosen one syndrome in order to make original music like they are making. It seems to be some kind of like everyman ability to be able to make music like this, is what the show is trying to say. But I really feel like if you're trying to make a show with two main characters who are just supposed to be everyman and like completely normal, it does get boring to some extent. Like, if you're going to watch 24 episodes of two people who are completely normal, you need to have something happen to them that's kind of extraordinary, and that has happened to them in some extent, but I just feel like it doesn't really justify the selection of them as the main character if you don't learn more about them. Okay, that's my rant out of the way. Onto their performance.
結果発表は CM の後だ。
Just to say a little bit about their musical performance, that was probably one of the longest ones we've had in the past couple of episodes, which makes sense because they're the main characters going at it. But I felt like that was probably the least, affecting song of the whole bunch. And it's obvious why they went for this more emotional tone, because if you look at the traditional setup for any like tournament arc, it seems like the one that they're following in this show is like the one from the Karate Kid. If you haven't watched the original 1984 one, maybe you remember from the 2008 one with Jaden Smith. In the one before the final, in the semifinal, they basically like throw the other side, the Cobra Kai's or whoever their equivalent is in the new version. They basically throw a match and have him like attempt to injure the Karate Kid in a very in his leg, so he can't stand on it, so he can't compete. So they win the final by default. And in this sense, it wasn't exactly, I thought it was going to be Angela's guardian. That would have actually been more interesting to me than the plot that it ended up turning out being, because Sibel only got here like 4 episodes ago, and she's able to influence the finale for no particular reason other than that she's a kind of a psycho. If it had been Angela's guardian and she's like so invested in preventing Carole Tuesday from getting to the final because she can't risk Angela losing, like she's so invested in that narrative of Angela being a winner and always being on top that she took matters into her own hands, that would have been more interesting to me, because the conflict between them would have been nice to see. But now we kind of just get this thing where Sibel is the one who stole all the attention from the actual other main character. I can't say antagonist, there's not really an antagonist in this. So then you have the injury, and then obviously after you get injured, you have to do your best. That's how the hero overcomes the obstacles that have been put in front of them. So they had to do their best in this performance, and to me this is probably the worst song ever that they've done in this whole show. And I get why they went for the more emotional tone. You can't really be energetic when you don't have a guitar and one of your hands are all burned up, but it seems to me like they should have saved their best shot for this particular show. And all the other people also perform more than one song, but I feel like Carole Tuesday in particular, sometimes the plot goes out of its way to have them perform a different song than they did before, which again seems to me like they're just promoting the soundtrack of the show more than the actual show itself. At this point, to me, it seems like the show is just a bunch of musical acts interconnected by some plot points to get us from point A to point B, which is kind of how action shows work too. Like in most action shows, it's like there's a fight scene, and we need to get from fight scene A to fight scene B. If you watch any of the Fast and Furious movies, it's like a set piece to set piece, and we have some loose plot points to get us from point A to point B. I'm not accusing the show of being like a music vehicle, first and foremost. I do think it's kind of on its way to being there if this trend continues in the next 12 episodes. I don't really know whether that will be the case, but let's see who makes it to the final.
一部しか映ってないんですけど、痩せ型の若い女性っぽいです。
痩せ型?
Yo, this wasn't even a mystery, bro. I knew this from the moment. I thought it was super obvious. Okay. Are we just gonna act like this was very mysterious? Okay, show. Okay, first things first, we know it's Sibel. It's super obvious. The package said Happy Birthday Tuesday on it. The little slender lady they showed in the picture was wearing suspenders. We saw the black X on the back. I didn't even have to pause the video to realize that. Second of all, they're making Angela a more relatable character again and again. Like, Tuesday and Carole have no flaws whatsoever. They're just perfect little music making, genuine, sincere little, like, you know, two goody two-shoes people who just walk around making music, playing, you know, making viral videos and music videos and getting judges to recognize their talent. And Angela's out here like actually being a real person. And I can't help but relate to her way more than those two. And I say this like 45 times an episode. At this point, I think it's intentional. I've come to just accept that they want us to relate to Angela more. Be like, even if her music is made by AIs, it doesn't mean that she's not a human. Because they're basically telling us like Carole and Tuesday are machines that make original music, and she's a human that makes machine music, but she's somehow better as a human. And then they somehow won against Piotr, who not only sang but also danced. They haven't danced at all this whole time. So that means they're basically winning with only their singing against people who both sing and dance. Their singing's not even that good. Like, their song was way worse than Piotr's. And I might just be a Carole and Tuesday hater at this point. You know, I might be too far gone down that cynical route to come back. But I feel like they really need to step up their game if they want to prove to me that they deserve to be in this position that they're in the finals. Or it could just be more of that cynical like commentary on reality show where like they're the only ones with the viral music video. But Piotr's also like internet famous, so it would make sense if they sent him to the final too. I'm totally overthinking this. Let's keep going. Okay. Are you being sarcastic, show, by saying that you never expected her to be behind it because it was kind of obvious the whole time? Second of all, I kind of feel like I already said they missed an opportunity by not having it be her mom or even her manager. Like, either one of those would have been better options than the person who actually did it. Also, the commentary that they were going for with Sibel, with her being a stalker fan, also kind of got lost because a stalker fan doesn't have that kind of access. That's kind of what makes them a stalker, is they have to go to these great lengths to get access in the first place. Like sneaking up outside your house when you don't want them to be, or like leaving a bomb in your mailbox or something weird like that. But she's basically a fellow performer, so you kind of lose that stalker fan angle. It comes off just like a jealous girlfriend / boyfriend angle, which is like, there's no commentary you can make on that in relation to a music show. If she had been kicked off a few rounds earlier and just gotten obsessed with Tuesday, like by watching her on the screen, and maybe shook her hand in the crowd, and then came back and did this and be like, oh, you were supposed to, but they actually had no interaction at all, that would have been more commentary on the stalker fan aesthetic. In this, it just comes off like a jilted lover type deal, which is, you know, tired at this point. And Angela and her guardian acting like they never expected this is like, okay, I mean, you might not have.
Tuesday-san, お迎えに参りました。
This is perfect. This is what I wanted this whole time. Maybe I'm just impatient. this isn't really more of a fight. This is kind of what I wanted, where Carole doesn't have, like, she thinks of her being, like, automatically a rich person, just her life being better. This is the conflict I wanted, but I wanted it to happen earlier, you know? You have to have some setup for this before you can have a payoff with the conflict coming full circle and the, you know, like, final determining moment. That's when you fight. Like, that's the worst time to fight. That's the best time to make a fight in the story. So you then have to have, like, a setup for that fight earlier in the story, which they haven't really had. So this seems like it's kind of coming out of nowhere. And even during the performance, Carole didn't have anything going on in her face, like, oh, like looking over at Tuesday being like, hey, what's going on here? You're not giving this your 100%, or something like that. Or before the performance being like, oh, hey, it's another one of Tuesday's, like, dumb stuff that we have to deal with now. There was nothing like that. And now Tuesday's going home. It just seems a bit late in the game for this kind of character development, but we're not actually that late in the game. We're only halfway through. Maybe the problem I have with it is this kind of finality imposed on it by the tournament arc kind of storyline, because really they were never about winning this talent show. They just wanted to make it as music artists, right? And now for Carole to be like, oh, this is now our only way to be successful, when before they were successful without the show, kind of makes me think like we're reframing their success in terms of this reality music show, which is like, hey, is the show saying that people who get caught up in this kind of reality music show, are they forced to think like that because of the rounds and beating people, and you kind of just lose track of the subjectivity of the medium as a whole, and you kind of just get pulled into this us versus them mentality, like we have to beat them, then we can win and be successful, when success is not guaranteed to anyone who wins any of these reality music shows. If you pay attention to, there's been 15 or 16 seasons, 18 seasons of American Idol. Do we have 18 winners that are now super pop stars? No, not really. There's only a few in between them. So it seems like the people who are going to be successful are going to be successful anyway. Maybe that's the point the show is trying to make. I don't know. I don't think so. But it's good to see that Tuesday's finally reckoning with the place that she comes from, because that's kind of her defining characteristic, is that she ran away from home. And Carole, obviously, her defining characteristic that she has no one else to turn to. She was living in the back of a weird store, like in a basically like a storage rent, like a loft, basically. So it's good to see we're finally getting that conflict. I just wish there had been a little bit more set up earlier on, so we could see that we're going full circle, and this is something that has always existed, and it's not just something that they're playing now because of, you know, the way the tournament arcs work, and you really want the team to break up before they come back together to win the final. So that was episode 11 of Carole and Tuesday. We're kind of getting to the point where this show is kind of like lost my patience with this show. If you think of a similar show directed by Shinichiro Watanabe, like Space Dandy, for example, there's never any episode that's boring. Like, every episode is tackling a new, like, topic, or like they go on a new adventure, something completely new. There are, like, multi-episode arcs, but generally they deal with something that never gets boring. Like, it's usually structured in a 3-act structure over the 2 episodes. They kind of have like a nice payoff at the end. This show is just kind of dipping into like random family drama type scenarios. There's really like no reason to continue watching the show other than if you really like the music, because the visuals that the show started off really well with don't really happen anymore. The performances aren't really that well animated anymore. I've already talked about this before. They just cut to flat, like static reaction shots in between. The 3D animation mixed with the people playing the piano with the hands and the guitar and like the 2D of the face isn't really a thing anymore. Was it just like, so Netflix shows, I kind of get like this conflicted, like they have this weird dual identity, right? Because they're usually like 10 to 13 episodes. And they really have to hook you with the first 3. Like, if you've ever done any kind of writing, the teacher will always tell you need to have a really good hook so that people get started reading, because once you've got them on the hook, people don't really, let go of things. Sometimes you kind of just fade off and don't finish things, but generally if you start, you're going to finish. And it seemed to me like the first 3 or 4 episodes were really intended and really kind of crafted with that purpose, like with these really impressive visuals and kind of the best music of the series so far. But since then, it's kind of just gone downhill for me. And I'm wondering if that's because of the Netflix influence. It's like, we really need these first 4 episodes to pop. And then after that, we can kind of go downhill until the finale. And And generally, anime does work like that in some sense because the middle episodes, you can't really blow all your budget on that because you need to save it for the beginning and the end, which is what really counts, beginning to get people and the end to bring people back. And so it seems to me like Carole Tuesday is stuck in this weird like dichotomy of trying to be two things at once. It's trying to be like this episodic TV anime, and in that sense, it's not doing too well because we're kind of getting like repetitive issues dealt with again and again in every episode. We're not really moving forward at any discernible pace. If this had been a 12 episode show, I feel like if we had condensed the 24 episode story into 12 episodes, maybe it would have worked better. I don't know where the show's going to go after this just because of the nature of how these shows work. They're based on a band of characters that do just random things, like different things every episode. For the past, I think, 4 or 5 episodes, we've been with this challenge show arc, and it's kind of getting really long in the tooth at this point. It's outstayed its welcome, to be sure. We haven't really refreshed the formula in any sense. They keep performing on the same stage again and again. We don't go to any new places. There's no like re-evaluation of how far they've come. Like if you had to perform in a stadium or something, like when they had to perform at that Eterna Fest or whatever it was, Sidonia Fest, yeah. When they had to perform at that, they were like, oh, look at this big stage. But nothing in this talent show matches anything of that grandeur. So there's no like, oh, we've come so far type progression moment at all. There's nothing like that. And their like musical performances haven't gotten any better. It would have been nice if they started off at a lower level and they progressed throughout the show, but that doesn't seem to be the case because my favorite song of the show so far has been that Dirty Laundry song they make while they're sitting in the laundromat, which seems to be like towards the very beginning of the show when they just moved in together. And it's kind of the opposite of what it's supposed to be. How much of this is intentional, how much of this is not? When you have kind of like a very well-known director like Shinichiro Watanabe at the helm of this, you kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I feel like a lot of the kind of the more tropey or like overplayed elements of this, I can't help but think that those are not intentional. Like he's not trying to make some kind of soapy music drama at the end, like turn it around to be some kind of grand commentary on music shows in general. I don't think it's that meta. I think it's just kind of straightforward music show, and I don't really want to keep watching this. We'll see if I do episode 12. I'll watch it and see if there's anything worth saying about it because I'm kind of struggling to say stuff about this. Despite that, this is somehow the longest video yet. 20 minutes about a show that I don't really like anymore. Okay, maybe I need to talk less in the future. Okay, so that's it for Carole Tuesday episode 11. Maybe tune in for episode 12, maybe don't. We'll see if one comes up or not. I don't know. So thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And tell me why I'm wrong in the comments. And I'll see you next week.